During the early to mid 23rd century, Starfleet Command would begin to experiment with several 4-warp nacelle starship designs. And one of these designs, the Cardenas Class, would prove itself a valuable addition to Starfleet Command and the United Federation of Planets. But what do we know about this unusual class? Well, today we'll find out. Hello and welcome to another episode of Truth or Myth Beta Canon, a Star Trek web series that dives into the history of any given topic using beta canon sources and my own imagination to fill in the gaps. In today's episode, we're taking a look at the Cardenas Class as first seen in Star Trek Discovery, to better understand its place in Star Trek history. This video is an update and reworking of a much older video I once made, before I had access to the much better Space Engine program, and even before these beta canon videos truly existed. So once again, I thought I'd pull out one of these videos, update and rewrite it to conform to my now established style, and give you good trinaries the video on the class that you deserve. Of course, as always, because this is a beta canon video, all information relayed should pretty much be taken with a grain of stardust, and only considered a little bit of Star Trek fun. And so, with all that out of the way, let's begin. Since the conception of Starfleet's first starship classes, Starfleet's Corps of Engineers had been debating the usefulness of additional warp nacelles above and beyond the standard 2-nacelle starship designs that Starfleet had been using and known for. There were clear advantages to having more than 2 nacelles, such as still being able to achieve higher warp speeds if a nacelle was rendered inoperative, a situation which Starfleet Command itself looked favorably upon. And when all nacelles were operating, it did in fact give a slight boost to a starship's speed, as the warp field generated by them could be focused more tightly and operate at higher frequencies. However, there were also rather large downsides, those being even more resources poured into these starship designs, along with requiring even more power to be generated by these starships' warp cores, and to most in the Federation, these design improvements seem dubious at best. The mid-23rd century was a time of amazing development for Starfleet. At the age of 24, Dr. Richard Daystrom made his breakthrough in duotronic technology, and this breakthrough would eventually lead to classes such as the Constitution class becoming a reality. But in 2243, Starfleet Command needed a starship class to test out this new technology. And with its space frame already in place, just begging for new technology, plans for the Cardenas class would be altered to include this revolutionary new tech. Sitting at a length of approximately 411 meters, the Cardenas class would be designed to be operated by 300 officers and crew members. Because of its new duotronic components, the Cardenas class would be the first Starfleet vessel class to break the Warp 7 barrier, as duotronics allowed for more complicated and faster control over a starship's warp fields. Initially expected to have an absolute maximum speed of warp factor 7, the Cardenas class would surprise everyone at Starfleet Command by also being the first starship class to achieve and maintain a warp factor of 8. Though traveling at that speed was determined to be detrimental and dangerous to the ship, but nevertheless it would go down in history as a feat of the class. As a result of these warp trials, however, the Cardenas class would end up with a standard cruising speed of warp factor 6, and an emergency maximum speed of warp factor 7, making this class one of Starfleet's fastest classes of the time. This class would also have improved weapons capabilities. Again, utilizing the Cardenas class as a testbed for new technologies, this class would be the first to include the new phaser emitter system, a weapons technology being tested by this class for its inclusion in the upcoming Constitution class. Up to this point in Starfleet history, all starships were equipped with the latest phase cannon systems. And although powerful, the intermittent nature of the phase cannon beam was seen as a downside of that particular system. And so, when Starfleet weapons designers came up with a way for the starship to emit a continuous beam of destructive phaser energy, Starfleet was only too happy to oblige, and agreed to have the Cardenas Class equipped with this new system, along with the standard phase cannon systems of the time. All other systems, including shield and torpedo technologies, would remain basically the same as to what was installed in most other classes. The Cardenas class would contain 3 personnel transporters and 3 cargo transporters, as well as 2 shuttle bays stocked with the latest shuttlecraft and workhorse auxiliary vehicles. The Cardenas class, at least at the time, would be considered a mixed bag for Starfleet's expectations. Though wowing the powers that be with its warp speed capabilities, it really didn't impress much in other areas. The new phaser systems were in fact stronger and more efficient than its cannon counterpart. But that system in itself raised a few questions in Starfleet's Corps of Engineers. The main one being, if these systems were installed in a dual nacelle design, would there be a significant difference in performance to warrant this class's 4 nacelles? This would be a question that would not take long to be answered, as in late 2244, Starfleet's newest starship design, the USS Constitution, would be launched from Earth and would ultimately prove that a dual nacelle starship design with all these new duotronic systems could in fact perform just as well as the Cardenas class design. And the increases in speed, which had initially been a wow factor for the class, became disappointing when the USS Constitution herself was able to reach and maintain warp factor 8 with much less danger to the starship itself than had been experienced by the Cardenas class. This meant that although the Constitution class would have the same cruising speed as the Cardenas class, the Constitution class would end up outdoing the Cardenas class by having an emergency maximum speed of warp factor 8. There was also one other unintended side effect of the Constitution class, that being its design aesthetic. Up to this point in its design history, Starfleet starships were still fairly boxy looking, with warp nacelles that at times ended up seeming to ride off into infinity. However, the Constitution class did away with the boxy look, going back to an earlier style of cylindrically shaped nacelles, which basically gave the Constitution class a feeling of being the future of Starfleet starship designs. As a result, Starfleet immediately ended all its standing orders on most classes being built at the time, including that of the Cardenas class, making the unprecedented decision to commission redesign of all its ships based on the Constitution class aesthetic. And so the Cardenas class would only have a limited run in its production, churning out less than 1/4 of Starfleet's original order before production was halted. This, however, would also have an unintended side effect for the class itself. Because so few existed, and due to its radically different design qualities, many officers in Starfleet would seek out a post on the vessels of this class, making it almost as vigorously sought out as the Constitution class. And although this would not save the class from its eventual decommission by the year 2266, it would reinforce Starfleet's continual experimentation into 4 warp nacelle designs. And this in turn would lead directly to the development and production of the Constellation class, a class that herself would make a mark in Starfleet history. And so, although a minor footnote in Starfleet's starship design historical texts, the Cardenas class would nonetheless be an important addition to Starfleet's Starfleet, earning this class its coveted place in Starfleet history. Thank you for watching today's episode of Truth or Myth Beta Canon. What do you think of the Cardenas class and the historical narrative that I've created here? Do you want to see more videos like this one? Well, leave your comments in the section below. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, hitting that little bell icon so you won't miss a single video we release. Want to help the channel reach Warp Factor 8? Then consider becoming a channel patron. The link to our Patreon account is in the description below. Thanks again for watching. Live long and prosper.